Hey y'all, today we're making our own instant rice. This is just the rice that comes in the bag. You don't really want instant rice, right? Because it's already instant. We're going to make the kind that you have to cook into the kind that you don't have to cook. So you can use as little or as much rice as you want. I am going to do 3 cups of rice. So that means I'm going to need twice as much water. So all you're going to do is cook your rice according to the package directions. For me, I cook my rice, like I said, at a 2-to-1. So 3 cups of rice, I'll use 6 cups of water. And then I'm going to rinse my rice very, very well because this is your only opportunity to rinse it, okay? Once we dehydrate it, it's kind of pointless. So rinse your rice until the water runs clear, and then you're going to add that into your pot with 6 cups of water, and then I bring mine to a boil and once it starts to boil, I go ahead and turn the temperature down to a simmer, and then I cover it up and I let it cook on a simmer for about 15 or 20 minutes. Now make sure when you're doing this, do not add any kind of oil or anything to this. Don't add oil, don't add butter, okay? Anything that has fat like that can go rancid when you store it, so we want to make sure we don't add any of that, okay? So just plain rice, plain water. Let it cook until it's done. Now, ideally, you'll let it cool down a little bit until, you're able to manage it with your hands where it's not so hot it burns you. I got busy. Okay, I got busy and mine sat on the stove with a lid on it, for an hour or 2. So it got a little bit clumped, so I'm just going to break mine up. But, you can also at this point, if you want to, you can go and give it another little rinse if it kind of clumps like this. Rinse it with some water and it'll kind of break it up. But I didn't really care, so we're just going to move on after I somewhat declump the rice. So now that I've got my rice cooked and ready to go, I am going to get this dehydrating. So I am using these mesh dehydrator liners because the holes on my regular trays are way too big for rice. Yes, this is stained from when I cooked blueberries. I don't mind it. Maybe I really probably won't, y'all. So I am using a long grain white rice. This is Parish rice, and this rice is it's a higher protein content with a lower glycemic index. It tastes really, really good. I can buy mine locally, but I don't know that if it's sold everywhere, but you can get it from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description box if I can remember, just so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. But you can use any kind of rice for this. And some of y'all may be thinking, they sell instant rice and it's not very expensive. Why would you make your own? Well, for me, this particular rice that I use does not come in instant. That's not something that they do. They only make the cooked rice, or the kind that you have to cook, So I decided I would make my own instant rice just for days that maybe I don't want a whole pot of rice, or maybe I just don't feel like taking the time to cook a pot of rice. This is very, very simple. And y'all know we're going to cook it, or not cook it, but, make it at the end of the video, just so y'all can see, how it rehydrates and everything. So like I said, I'm just going to put mine on my trays, and I do put a jar lid in the middle. One of y'all told me about that, which has been such a lifesaver. And that way my rice doesn't fall through the hole in the center of my tray. And then you just spread it out, try to declump it as much as you can. The thing about it is it will still dehydrate with big clumps in it, but it's going to take a little bit longer, So just try to break up as many of those big clumps as you can, and then you'll be good to go. It'll be fine. Like I said, it's going to dehydrate anyway. So I just spread mine out on as many trays as I have, and I do actually end up with a little bit of rice left over that doesn't fit on my trays, but that's fine. We either eat that the night that I'm doing it, or we freeze it, or just put it in the refrigerator to eat it later, or whatever the case is. So, you know, it's fine. Like I said, there's no magic number. You just make as much as will fit in your dehydrator, and it'll be fine. So anyway, you're just going to keep going, like I said, until you use all your rice up. But you can use, like I said, I'm using this Parish rice. You can use regular old cheap, you know, rice. You can do this with brown rice. You can do basmati rice, jasmine rice, whatever kind of rice your little heart desires should work for this. You know, now, I mean, if there's one weird rice out there somewhere in the world that doesn't work, I mean, I don't know about it. So, you know, it should all work in this, is what I'm getting at. So once you get all your rice put onto your trays, you're going to put this on your dehydrator. This is the kind of dehydrator I have. Y'all ask me about it all the time. I got mine from Ollie's, which is a discount store. It's very cheap. One of these days, I'm going to get me a bigger one because I do dehydrate a lot. But for right now, this works fine for me. It has, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trays. So I just put this all together, stack it up, and then I'm going to dehydrate this between 140 and 145 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? And you're going to need to let that go until it dehydrates. That's going to depend on the rice you used, how much is on your tray, your dehydrator, the environment. Is it storming and humid the day that you're doing this? So all those are factors, but just let it go until it is completely dried out and crumbly, okay? If it's soft in the middle, or if it's kind of bendy still, it is not ready. You need to let it go longer, okay? Because we don't want to put this up into a jar and then it be not dehydrated and then it's going to go bad on you. So make sure it is completely dry. Now, what I'm going to do, because I had such big clumps in mine, you know, because my rice was sticky when I started, I am going to put this into a clean towel, and I'm just going to break it up in the towel. Now, you can break this up just with your hands, but rice is hard, okay? It's very hard, and it kind of tears your hands up a little bit. Like, your hands are going to be sore if you try to break this all by hand because it's just so hard. So, highly recommend putting it into a little kitchen towel or whatever kind of little, I don't know, cheesecloth, whatever you have will work just fine. And then just break up any big clumps. Now, don't worry if it breaks some of your rice in half. It will do that a tiny bit, but not enough to make a difference. Rice is so small anyway that it really doesn't break it that much. It just kind of breaks it apart, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So I just always put anything I dehydrate out onto a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper to let it cool down completely. And you'll see in a minute that I put way too much rice on this tiny cookie sheet. So I had to kind of, you know, I had to change some things, but put it out onto something to let it completely cool down. We don't want to put it in the jar warm, because if you do, it could create some moisture, which of course is going to make your rice go bad. So that is how much I ended up with. And like I said, I'm just going to let it sit on the counter for a little while. Usually it cools off pretty fast because it's not that hot to begin with. So just let it cool down completely. Okay. So now I'm going to put this into a jar. And again, for the 25th video in a row, I didn't know what size jar I needed, you know, so here we are. So I couldn't pick up the rice with that little piece of parchment I had on the cookie sheet because it was too much rice. So I pulled it out from under the rice and put it onto a different cookie sheet. And then I just kind of split the rice up to make it a little bit easier to handle. I still put too much on here, but you know, here we are. So anyway, what you're going to do now is just put your rice into whatever container you're using. Now, I'm going to say this again. I've said it, I think maybe in the last video I did. I don't always say this in the video, but if I'm going to store something for a long time and like I feel like I'm not going to use it up very fast, I will vacuum seal it, okay? I do have a jar vacuum sealer, and I will try to remember to link that down below if you want to see what kind I use. It's a really simple one. And but otherwise, if this is something that you eat all the time, then there's no point or no reason to vacuum seal it. There's no need to do that. Now, if it makes you feel better, you can, you know, but you don't need to. It's not going to make it go bad if you don't seal it with a vacuum sealer, okay? Unless, like I said, you're planning on storing it for years or something. But, you know, stuff like this usually, you know, is something that we use pretty often. So, but that is how much I ended up with. Again, I ended up with half a jar because I can't, in my brain, this is what I started to say earlier, and I think I got sidetracked, but I can never figure out what size jar I need. It never. I always get the wrong size jar every single time. But in my defense, this really didn't fit into the smaller jar either. And I didn't have an in-between size. So I just put as much as I could into my quart jar. And then the other part I just left out so we could just eat it. And then I'm going to cook some of it up for y'all. Or I keep saying cook, but we're not cooking it. So that is how much I ended up with. That's 4 cups or so. So it probably ended up with about 5 cups, you know, of instant rice. And that's all you have to do. Now, you know, just like the Minute Maid instant rice, well, that's what we just made. So to make this, you're going to take equal parts rice and boiling water. I'm using 1/4 of a cup just, you know, for the purposes of this video. I didn't actually need a big bunch of rice right now. So I have 1/4 of a cup of the rice we just made and 1/4 of a cup of boiling water. Mix it up. Cover it up with something. I should have covered it up with something solid, but all I had sitting by me was a towel. So I just let the towel sit over it, and you're just going to let it sit there until it rehydrates. It takes about 5 minutes. Now, mine wasn't completely rehydrated. As you can see, there's a little bit of water in there, but I was trying to get this video up so I could get it edited and get it out to y'all. But that's all you have to do. It's just like regular minute rice. You mix equal parts rice and water and let it, you know, cover it up and let it sit until it rehydrates, and you've got perfect rice. And you made it yourself, so it's exactly the kind of rice that you like. But anyway, that is all I have for y'all today, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.